These combined sentences questions can be super hard because it's difficult to know what they're actually testing. What do they actually care about as you're doing this question? Well, one thing that can come up is whether or not the choice is concise. This is kind of the way that they test style on the SAT. We like shorter answers. And even though a combined sentences question is really testing the ideas, sometimes style kind of creeps in. So if I were just going by style here, I would look at choice A and I would say, this kind of seems good. It's nice and short, it's to the point, and it doesn't sound wrong, right? Spalding agreed that there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers, and he thought he knew who should write one. Sounds good to me. Notice I'm not thinking about grammar. The grammar almost never creeps in to these combined sentences questions, just very, very rarely. It's usually about ideas and usually about style. But let's look at these other choices. Maybe there's a reason that they're longer. Maybe there's some sort of connector word, some idea that we need to get across and that we're not allowed to remove. So the next shortest choice would be B, and this adds this word namely. So Spalding agreed that there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers. Namely, he thought he knew who should write one. Well, namely is a word we use when we're naming someone, and we haven't named anyone. So why use the word? It's not really fulfilling its purpose here. So it's adding something, but it's adding something bad. We don't want it. Choice C is very similar to choice A grammatically. Basically, what we have here is we have two separate sentences that we're joining in like a very weak way. And usually on these combined sentences questions, that's not good enough. We need to join the sentences and add something else that gets the ideas across. So normally I would eliminate something like A and I would eliminate something like C because they're weak connections. A semicolon is basically just a period. So we haven't really combined these sentences in a meaningful way. A comma and an and is kind of just like a period as well. So that's also not really combining them in a strong way. But if I had to choose between A and C, I would choose A because C is wordier. And semicolons are kind of weird. We don't use them often in our own writing, and so we want to be careful when we use them on the SAT. There are reasons we use them, but it's just all things being equal, I'd rather not use it. I'd rather stick with the normal kind of wording like the word and. So C is worse than A, and A is not that great either. But let's look at D. This adds another word, this word meanwhile, right? Spalding agreed that there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers, and meanwhile he thought he knew who should write one. Well, to me, the word meanwhile is doing a similar thing that the word namely was doing in choice B. It's adding a meaning that we don't really need. Meanwhile implies that two events are happening at once. But there's no events here. He just has these like thoughts, right? He just has these opinions, and they don't have a moment in time. So meanwhile is a weird word to use because it involves time. There's no time in this sentence. So we end up picking A because it's best. Doesn't mean that it's great. It's just better than all the other choices. And sometimes that's going to happen with these combined sentences questions, where you have to kind of just go through using process of elimination and pick the least bad choice. Normally, like I said, this and is a very weak connection that wouldn't be enough to join them. But everything else has a problem, and so I have to settle for this kind of weak connection. That's why we need to be thorough. That's why we need to check every choice. Sometimes a bad answer ends up being right.